This is the audio recording and PowerPoint presentation over Chapter 15, which is preparing for our persuasive speeches. Let's quickly review the persuasive speech assignment. The details of this are also posted on Blackboard. First of all, it is 5 minutes in length. A speech outline is required, which must be posted to Blackboard. Must reference at least 2 sources of information, both in your works cited and also orally within the speech of your text. And with your works cited page, it should be in APA format. It does not require visual aid, and make sure that you dress appropriately. The one thing I wanted to mention about 5 minutes in length is that I am going to be more of a stickler on this for persuasive speeches, and it requires you to manage your content appropriately in order to meet that 5-minute speech length. Persuasion. Persuasion is the verbal and nonverbal messages that shape, reinforce, and change people's responses. The purpose of a persuasive speech is to move an audience to action and to change or alter their behaviors. We want them to behave or think differently. So, of course, how do we do that? First, you need to develop your topic and then the thesis of your topic. It is helpful for a persuasive speech for your topic to be somewhat controversial. You don't want to try to persuade your audience to attend College of Western Idaho since they already do. So use your audience analysis that we learned about in the informational speech and make sure that you choose a topic that's appropriate. And really in persuasion, you can really choose anything that you really want. As controversial as you want, just as long as you present it appropriately and with enough evidence, you can go to the far stretches. In developing your thesis, just make sure that you review these things. That are you doing a proposition of a fact, what it is or isn't? Is it a value or a policy that you're trying to make a change in perception or behavior? Going back just to the basics of a speech, make sure that you have the appropriate introduction, body, main points, and conclusion. And if you need to, go back and review speech preparatory for the informational speech. This will help you here, but this is a speech, so make sure you've got the basic components covered. And this also includes the balance of 3. We reviewed this when we talked about the informational speech, but this is your 3-legged stool of your speech. If you don't do one of these well, you're going to fall over. So get the topic of your speech, build the content or the evidence appropriately, select the right organizational format for the speech, and then, of course, make sure that you practice your delivery and can deliver the content and the organization well. Persuading your audience. Once again, you need to understand your audience's disposition through audience analysis. And for a persuasive speech and your topic, just kind of decide, are they going to be receptive to the topic? Is it going to be hostile? Or is it going to be neutral? And based on your answers to those questions, you will need to deliver a little bit differently or organize your content a little bit differently. First and foremost, you must provide a good reason for the audience to listen. Why should they care about what you're talking about? Provide them good reason. There are 3 cornerstones to persuasion. In this picture here is of Aristotle, who came up with these 3 elements of persuasion a long, long time ago, and that is ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos, this is that there is perceived personal character of the speaker. If a speaker has high ethos, they have integrity, and the audience feels they can trust them. They show passion about the topic. An audience perceives them to be trustworthy and to be acting on goodwill. So, what are some examples of people with high ethos? And we come from all walks of life, so high ethos characters are a little bit hard to define. One that comes up pretty rarely is Colin Powell. He was in George W. Bush's administrative cabinet for some years. He's been on the political scene for, I think, his entire life, but Colin Powell seems to always have high ethos. Why? Why do you think he has such high ethos? Why do people deem him to be trustworthy? Logos. Logos is rational or logical proofs, and you can use inductive or deductive reasoning as explained in your book. And logos also has the appropriate evidence to support claims. It's logical. And so logical people want evidence and data. Pathos appeals to listeners' emotions. We're influenced by our feelings of passion, personal values, and perceptions. And the thing about this is that emotion does fade. So when you're making an emotional appeal, you'll also want to couple it with a logical appeal for a lasting effect to really stick in your audience minds. Pathos, you're going to see all kinds of pathos appeals coming up with the holiday season. Some ones to easily identify with are humane societies who use pictures. Pictures are very effective in having pathos appeals. Pictures of kitty cats, animals, dogs in desperate situations that might tug on the heartstrings of people to give to the Humane Society. Different types of appeals, just to kind of reiterate. There's motivational. These are based on perceptions. The audience is moved to do something because it's reasonable. This goes back to logos, the logos type of persuasion. Emotional appeals, based on emotions. Personal stories, pictures that tug on heartstrings. Personal stories work really well with emotional appeals. If you have a personal story to tell, either first person or an account of somebody else you know, that works really well. And then, of course, logical appeals based on reasoning, evidence, data, specific examples. Supporting your specific purpose. This is going back to evidence. Some examples of evidence that you can present are facts, testimony. You might interview somebody who is credible in their area of expertise and can provide you testimony. Inference. Okay, this is a long sentence, but it does make sense. Inference is the reason from an already accepted position to another position that seems to follow from the already accepted one. Okay, so to break this down, you guys are attending College of Western Idaho to receive some credits of some type to possibly transfer to another institution, or you can receive your associate's degree. So an inference could be in a persuasive element. You're already going to school, you're already committed to higher education. Rather than just stopping at an associate's degree, why don't we move forward and set the goal on receiving your bachelor's degree? So you already have accepted position of education as appointment, at least to attain your associate's degree. Why not move forward to a bachelor's degree? That is inference. Statistics, data, information collected from surveys, experiments, from credible resources. Types of credibility, and this is very important for you as a speaker to be establishing with the audience, and this needs to be established really in the introduction of your speech. Why should we be listening to you on this topic? Why are you credible to speak on this topic? So you can establish initial credibility just by the position that you may hold. If you work for Quest, you might be able to tell us some information about Quest, and just because you work there gives you initial credibility. Experiences. I have a student that has had breast cancer in her life, and based on her life experiences, she's probably really credible to talk to us about the prevention of breast cancer or how to deal with breast cancer. Derived credibility. This is just the instance where listeners believe a speaker based on their organization of logic, their evidence, and that they're speaking dynamically, their presentation of the information. We are people, and we like to believe in others, specifically if their nonverbals are giving us the cues that they are trustworthy and that we can believe in what they say. That's where derived credibility comes in. Terminal credibility. This is I can't even say it right now, cumulative experience, and it's coupled with goodwill and trustworthiness of the speakers. So listeners combine derived and initial credibilities and really come down to the terminal credibility. So for you, in building credibility for your speech, you need to provide why you're credible. You could state qualifications. You can show listeners that you care about them and the topic. You can appeal to their emotions. Make sure you reason carefully and avoid reasoning fallacies, and those reasoning fallacies are described well in your textbook. Use ethical supporting materials. This includes websites. And use congruent verbal and nonverbal communication to show listeners that you care about the topic and that you understand it thoroughly. Counter-arguments. Counter-arguments are important because in a persuasive speech or in any type of persuasive argument, people tend to believe others more if they present both sides of an argument, pros and cons. So it's just the presenting of the other side. It helps build credibility because you are presenting the other side. You're uncovering it. You're unveiling it. You're not trying to hide it. And it could really help you in the organization of your speech because you might present the cons of a policy or a fact, and then you present the pros, which you may be advocating for. So you can basically weight the pros heavier than the cons. In looking at your speech, make sure that you've got an organizational pattern identified. Problem solution is really easy. State the problem, explain the solution. And then the other one that's used pretty regularly is the Monroe's motivated sequence, which is more thoroughly described in your book. Okay, so getting back to delivery. Make sure that you breathe, you practice with your presentation aids, practice your delivery with nonverbal cues. Make sure you look at your audience, or in your case, it's your audience and the camera. Try to hold still as best as possible, and if you are standing, try to bend your knees. And in this speech, you should really try to stand and deliver. Don't sit down, and make sure you do have an audience in front of you. And then when you're comfortable, practice it one more time. So, in prepping for your speech, first, of course, pick your topic and then state what your thesis is. Brainstorm how can you develop credibility in order to speak on this topic. What kind of appeals will work on this topic, and what can you use as a speaker? What kind of evidence can you gather? Do you have enough evidence? Do you have too much evidence for the length of the speech? And what kind of counter-arguments could you use? And then, of course, once you have some idea of your content, what is the best organizational pattern? So once you've got these things nailed down and start writing your outline, you can then move on to practicing the delivery of your speech. If you have any questions about appropriate speech topics or would like to brainstorm your persuasive speech topic, please make sure to give me a call or shoot me an email, and we can discuss it. Thanks.